everybody, my name is Tasmyn May, welcome back to my... Hello everybody, my name is Tasmyn May, welcome back to my channel TeaBooksAndTazmyn, and today we're doing a general end of the year wrap up with my favourite books of the year, a little Q&A and a sort of catch up. My friends just tagged me in a clip from Nativity and I don't recognise it. It must be from the fourth one. The one without Mark Rutan and is therefore inferior in every way. Oh my god, we need to watch it. Why has Tom Hiddleston been taken down? Because we could only see his legs. You okay, Tom? Yeah, I'll be fine. So, where have I been? The answer is not on YouTube. I'm so sorry. The last couple months have been really hectic. I've started a new job. I'm now working at Fairy Loot. I've also had a really rough patch with mental health, which is why I haven't been very good at uploading videos. But I'm coming out of the rough patch now, which is good. Okay, in terms of books, no, fuck it, wait. I think I'm going to read you a list of all of the books that I've read this year. I read 50 books. My goal was to read 30 books and I hit that in like June, I think. So I upped it to 50 and I just hit it a couple days ago. So I'm gonna read you a list of all 50 books that I read and then talk about my top 10. Book 1 of 2020 was James Acaster's classic Scrapes, which is a memoir about the comedian James Acaster, and I listened to the audiobook of it. Then I read The Magician's Nephew, which is book 1 in the Chronicles of Narnia by Lewis Carroll. By C.S. Lewis. I was hoping that I was going to read one a month out of the 7 books, and I didn't. I read that one, so that's fine. Then I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hardcastle by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I Don't Want to Be Crazy by Samantha Schutz was an audiobook. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy I buddy read with my darling friend Ilya. And my final book of January was The Five, The Untold Stories of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold, and it's narrated by Molly from Sherlock. I can't remember the actress's name, but the audiobook, as well as the contents, was fantastic. So highly recommend the audiobook. Then into February, I read Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nicholls. I read that in one sitting on a flight to LA back when, you know, we were allowed to travel. Then I read Herding Cats, which is a comic book bound up by Sarah Andersen, who is also Sarah Scribbles on the internet. Then I read Hearstopper volumes 1 and 2 by Alice Oseman, the graphic novels. Got 2 more graphic novels. I remember reading a lot of graphic novels that month because I wasn't in a reading mood at all. And I read volume 5 in the Rick and Morty comic books that are bound up into graphic novels. That one's called Tiny Rick. Then I started the Jim Henson's Labyrinth Coronation comic series, again in bind-ups, and that month I read volume 1. It's like a prequel/equal to Labyrinth, the film with David Bowie. If you like the film, I highly recommend it. It's amazing. Next, I read Wilder Girls by Rory Powers, and then straight after that I read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, narrated by Rosamund Pike. By the way, I'm on a spinny chair, in case you couldn't tell from the spinning. Then I read volume 2 of Labyrinth Coronation. Next, I read Pages & Co. book 1, Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. Next was The Tales of Beedle the Bard, the audio version by She Who Must Not Be Named. I will not be reading or buying any of her books in the future, but I wanted to just let you know that I had read that this year. Next, I read Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, which is a graphic novel. Then I read How to Be Autistic by Charlotte Amelia Poe, followed by Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which again I listened to the audible version narrated by Tandy Newton. After that, I read volume 1 in the monstrous graphic novel series, Awakening. Then I listened and read along to The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, the audiobook also being read by Neil Gaiman. Oh, and I read physically a illustrated edition by Elise Hurst, and it's stunning. Next was On Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan, which, spoilers, is not going to be in this video again because I hated it so much. Probably my least favourite book of the year. Next, I read Aesop's Fables, which isn't going to be in my top 10, but I fucking loved it. What the hell? That was so unexpected for me to love Aesop's Fables so much. What? Then I read Fortunately the Milk by Neil Gaiman with the American Illustrated Edition. It's illustrated by Scotty Young, that one. The UK one is by Chris Riddle, and I do also want to get the Chris Riddle one because obviously I love Chris Riddle. I say obviously because I talk about him a lot. If you're new here, then hi, I love Chris Riddle. That was the end of April, I think, because I read them for the Magical Readathon by G over at Book Roast. Next up, I read A Bear Called Paddington by Michael Bond, again the audiobook narrated by Stephen Fry. Then I read Physically Toffee by Sarah Crossan, who is one of my favourite contemporary writers. Then I read A Study in Scarlet, book 1 in the Sherlock Holmes books by Arthur Conan Doyle. Next, I read on Kindle, which was possibly my only ebook that I actually completed this year, Dear Martin by Nick Stone. Then I read Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman for the second time. This time I listened to it on Audible. Still one of my favourite books of all time, but as it was a reread this year, I'm not going to include it in my top 10. Then I read Hold Your Own by K Tempest. Thank you, Jean, for giving that to me. And remember, guys, it's K Tempest, no dead naming, thank you very much. Next, I read The Northern Lights and The Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman, books 1 and 2 in his Dark Materials. No, I haven't finished The Amber Spyglass yet, guys. Fuck off. After that, I read A Closed and Common Orbit, book 2 in the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers. That was the only book that I completed for my readathon called Finishathon, which focuses on reading books that you've been like reading for a very, very long time. I was planning to do a second round of it at the end of this year, but like I said, life got hectic. So keep an eye on my socials because I will be doing another one in the first quarter, let's say, of 2021. Unfortunately, that's the only book that I finished during that because I started seeing someone at that time and then they ended up to be a total trash bag and a waste of my time and energy. So I should have just been reading instead. I should have. Fuck dating, read books. Then I read the 5 Gwenpool comic book bind-ups, volumes 1 through 5 by Christopher Hastings. If you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, you will know that I love Gwenpool. They've changed my kind of life plan. I want to write for Marvel now. I'm an actor, in case you didn't know. I want to be in the MCU at some point. That is a dream of mine, but now I also want to write for Marvel. I want to adapt Gwenpool for the big screen one day. Jess even got me, I might do a close-up, I might not if I'm too lazy, but this ring for Christmas and it says The Real Gwenpool on it. I love it, it makes me cry. Jess, you're perfect, you know me so well, thank you. Now we're into November and I read The Bear and the Nightingale, book 1 in the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. I'm reading this series 1 a month for Megan from Meg with Books' read-along of the Winter Night trilogy. So the live show for the second book, The Girl in the Tower, is going to be early January, and then in January they're reading the final book. Oh, I listened to that on Audible and the narration was amazing, so I definitely do recommend the audiobook as well. Next, I read I Hate Men by Pauline Harmange, translated from the French. Had a rocky relationship with that one. It's an essay. It just says I hate men on the cover, so it caught my attention in foils and I got it out of interest. And it was definitely an interesting read. I do recommend it. I don't necessarily agree with everything in it, but it was a very, very worthwhile read. Next, I finished Convenient Store Woman by Sayaka Morata. I say finished because I started reading it a couple months earlier and I just wasn't gelling with it. I'll put an insert here of my Goodreads review because I had a lot to say on how it has been received in the West. In case you can't tell, I'm half Asian, I'm half Chinese, and the book is translated from Japanese. Now, of course, while China and Japan are different cultures, there are similarities. And the fact that this book has been received as quirky and unique and like edgy and stuff drove me insane. It's an incredibly deep and difficult story, and the fact that so many people have brazenly called it quirky, be it famous writers, there have been comedians, there have been massive newspapers, and it makes me so angry. It makes me so angry. It isn't fun, it isn't quirky. It's about a woman that goes through a deep depression, who is probably autistic and who doesn't fit in with society's expectations of women, but because it feels different from what we're used to here in the West, people seem to have forgotten about the fact that it's about a human being that is struggling. And they're like, oh my god, they have what flavored chocolate in the supermarket? That's so quirky. Nah, it's Asian. Fuck off. Next, I read The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kate D. Camillo. She also wrote Because of Winn-Dixie and The Tale of Despero. While that isn't in my top 10, I do highly recommend it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Was it 5? I think, whoa, it might have been 4.5? Something like that. It was incredible. I read it in one sitting and I was bawling my eyes out by the end of it. Why am I not including it in my top 10? Next, I finished A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I listened to it on audiobook as well as reading it. I kind of jump between the two. I have a reading vlog of that, a spoiler reading vlog that's going to be going up early January, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And then if you're interested, I can do a spoilery reading vlog for the rest of the series too. Three more, nearly there. Next, I read I, Ada by Julia Gray, which is a fictionalized version of Ada Lovelace's childhood. And finally, in one day, because I knew I wasn't gonna finish the chunkier book that I'm still reading before the end of the year, I read 2 novellas in one day, and they are Nick and Charlie and This Winter, both by Alice Oseman. And that's it! That's all of them. That is all 50 books that I read this year. That's insane. I didn't think I was gonna do it. 50! I'm so proud of myself. Okay, now for some questions. Rick Kalk, my darling Rick, asked me a very undarling question, and that is, how many books have you bought and not read this year? If you go back and watch all of my book hauls, count how many books I bought, and then deduct about 10, that'll be the answer. Bronwyn from Babbles and Books asked, what book surprised you the most, good, bad, or both? I would say bad on Chesil Beach, as I mentioned already. I really, really hated it. It was so highly acclaimed, and yeah, I just thought it was absolutely god-awful. And Emma from Drinking by My Shelf thought the same, so I'm not just uneducated. If Emma says so, then it's true. And in terms of good, I would say probably The Bear and the Nightingale, because while I was expecting to really enjoy it, which I did, I wasn't expecting the writing to be so gorgeous. It's perfection. Fullybook.ed asked, what is the book that you want to read most next year, brackets, top priority in all caps? I don't know. I'm such a mood reader. I definitely want to read Acaster, A Court of Mist and Fury, but it's not top I want to read Spyglass, Acaster. I want to finish my reread of Jane Eyre. I don't know. Sorry. I am starting a new series on my channel called TBNA, where I'm going to be making a monthly TBR, but I'm calling it TBNA so I don't need to be really strict with myself. But it will still be a good opportunity for me to talk about the books that I'm excited for. Whether I get around to them or not, that's another matter. Lionhearted Isabel asked, book that I read that I'd most like to see adapted for the stage. Now, this might be a bit of a cheat answer, but the His Dark Materials series has been adapted for stage before. It was in a 2-part production at the National Theatre when I was like 3 years old. I do want to see that. The National Theatre has this thing called the Archives where you can go in and you can book a slot and you can, I assume, pay to watch things that they have footage of from before. So I will hopefully be able to see that at some point. I would love an adaptation of Eleanor Oliphant. It's completely fine. I think a BBC miniseries would be really good, sort of like Normal People. Not that I've seen Normal People, but the vibes I've got from the trailers is what I would like for Eleanor Oliphant. I also want an adaptation of The Bear and the Nightingale. I think probably a Netflix series, but that would also be stunning on stage. I saw The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe on stage earlier this year with my darling friend Kez playing Lucy Pevensey, and it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. So in that style, I would love to see The Bear and the Nightingale, with myself playing either Vasya or Anna. Maria asks who's my favourite new author that I've discovered. I'm pretty sure everyone can guess who that's gonna be, and it's Philip Pullman. He is my hero, and I didn't read him until the second half of this year. What? I can't imagine my life without Philip Pullman now. Philip, he's my god. He is my religion. I would die for that man. Another question from Fully Booked before I go into my top 10, and that is, what book did you read that made you go, whoa, that was clever? I have one answer, and that is when you find out in The Subtle Knife why His Dark Materials are called His Dark Materials. When I put the pieces together, wow. Genius. And the fact that because he's very much a pantser as opposed to a plotter, Philip Pullman. So the fact that he like had that planned when he made book 1 blew me away a bit. Should I keep doing questions now? No, I'll do a book and then I'll do a few more questions. I'll do a book and then I'll do a few more questions. How's about that? You can't answer, I'm just gonna do it. So the first book that was an instant favorite, and I knew it was gonna be a favorite come the end of the year as well, is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I nearly said Evelyn Hardcastle. That's a very different book and I did not like that one. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Absolutely stole my heart. When I first finished it, I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because the writing was quite simplistic, but I've decided to try and be less critical with my rating system this year. And because it's something that stayed with me for such a long time, I did bump it up to 5 stars because while it isn't, critically speaking, the best book ever, it made such a massive impact on me. The queer rep in this is beautiful. Obviously, it's about Evelyn and her 7 husbands, but the love of her life is a woman, and oh, I knew that the character was bi, which is why I picked it up, but I didn't expect the female-female love story to be the most heart-wrenchingly beautiful and incredibly written thing in the world. I want to reread it already. I think I might get the audiobook. We'll do another question! Jessie Talks Books asked, what book allowed you to escape this year when 2020 felt just a bit too much? I think I'm gonna have to be a predictable motherfucker and say Northern Lights. Lights. I'm sorry, is that gonna be my answer for everything? Maybe. I watched the Golden Compass film when I was about 10 years old, and so while I didn't read the book before, the world felt very familiar. And reading the book, which is so much better than every adaptation it's ever had. Oh my god, if you like the TV show of His Dark Materials, read the books because they are infinitely better. Even though I'd never read it before, it felt nostalgic and it felt like I was being let in on a secret. Also though, Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre has become probably my favourite book of all time. I said previously that it's overtaken Pride and Prejudice, but actually I think they might be on par. I don't want to have to choose between Jane and Lizzie. I don't know if I can. I read Jane Eyre for the first time this year. Similarly to The Northern Lights, I've grown up with the stories of Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre. They just feel like home. I know I can always rely on Lizzie Bennet when I'm feeling down, and now Jane Eyre as well. Alyssa from Girl Who Writes and Reads, who is one of my patrons, hey Alyssa, asks, what's my favourite drink to have while reading? Tea. Always tea. I always drink tea. My favourite tea is Whittard's black tea with rose and a glass of red wine too. Megan has asked me, what is something that made me want to throw a book across the room? Oh, I remember! Convenience Store Woman. When I finished it, I did throw it across the room because it made me so angry. I hated that book so much. Like I mentioned earlier, I gave that review. That was very much about the reception of it in Western society. But the book itself, I just didn't like. I hated every single one of the characters. I have a thing where if I wouldn't want to know the person in real life, I don't want to read about them. I don't want to watch shows about them. I don't want to listen to podcasts about them. If I don't want you in my life, I don't want you in my fictional life as well. The same doesn't apply to baddies, because while I don't want them as my buddy, I would be interested in learning about them. So that's why, for example, I loved Amarantha in Acaster, but I hated the main guy in Convenience Store Woman because he was just a trash human being. And then also the adventure of Edward Tulane. When I finished reading that, I nearly threw the book across the room because I was crying so much, like bawling my eyes out crying. It was incredible. Okay, so I haven't added it on my list of top 10, but it's like an honorary 11th place, okay? I loved that book. Has it become a new I can't be changing things last minute. Is this now an 11 favourites video? It might be. My darling James from Gent of Oxford asked, where would you like to travel to once it's safe to? Oxford. Get me back there ASAP, thank you. I also need to go back to China. I was meant to go back to China in February, and that's where everything closed down. And my mum managed to get back to China. She's the Chinese one. In June, July time. She'd been trying to get back also since February, but everything was cancelled. I think her flight was cancelled 5 times. My dad and I are still in England, who I've been able to see safely a few times this year, which has been really nice. So yes, I need to get back to China because I miss my family. And I also want to go to the Netherlands because I've made loads of Dutch booktube friends this year through book Twitter, through booktube. I need to see my darlings Ilya and Anne again and meet all of the others. And then, like I mentioned, Oxford, one of my favourite cities in the whole world. It's a 2-hour train journey away from me. Get me back there ASAP, please. Next book is The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. The thing that I put most emphasis on when recommending this book is that it isn't about Jack the Ripper. It isn't about how he killed them. There are some, like maybe a few pages in the whole 500-page book about their death, but it's not. It's about the women that they were, about the lives that were forgotten in the press. There are some that, because of their social circumstances, there is more about them historically. So Hallie Rubenhold wrote about them for longer sections than a few of the others. All of the women were real people. That sounds like such a blatantly obvious thing to say, but when looking at history, we forget oftentimes that they were human beings. I could get murdered tomorrow and I will be remembered as a murder victim other than by the people that knew me in real life. And then by the time they're all dead, if I am remembered, I will just be remembered as a murder victim as opposed to the person that I am today. And the thing about The Five that was so amazing was that it made them no longer just the murder victims of Jack the Ripper. You knew them as people. Astounding, incredible book. One of the best books I've ever read. Even if you're not used to reading non-fiction, get on it, genuinely. It's written in a way that it almost reads like a novel. Amazing book. Question now from Stories with Hope. Will you change up your reading goals / plans in 2021? I don't usually do reading goals necessarily, other than my Goodreads goal. I think I'm gonna set it to 50 straight away this year instead of 30 and then upping it. I think I'm gonna aim for 50 because now I know that I can do it. And I lagged in my reading towards the end of the year, so I might be able to actually read more than that. I might be able to hit 60. I'm the sort of person that if my goal seems too unattainable, I'm gonna give up entirely. I think my primary goal will be to read 50 books and and also to make sure that I'm reading more diversely. Ideally, I'd be able to read 50% books by white people and 50% books by non-white people. That isn't something that I'm going to be rigorous about, but I'm going to try and push my mood reading towards books that are more diverse. Ilya, who I've mentioned 15 times already, has asked, what did I love most about this year? Moving in with my best friend. So Jess, who is asleep right now because she has a migraine, moved in with me in August, I think it was. We've been thinking about moving in together for ages. This year she finally started drama school in London, and we decided that whether or not she got into drama school, she was gonna come and live with me. And then she did get into drama school, so we were like, well, we have zero excuses now. For those of you that stay up to date on my social media, you'll see that we're actually moving to a house in the new year because I'm sick and tired of this fucking flat. But then our friend Zoe is also gonna come and move in with us too. So there's gonna be 3 of us, and I'm so excited. So yes, Jess, definitely Jess. She's like my soulmate, my missing piece. And spending all day, every day with her is just a blessing. Like, I never get sick of her. Other people, I'll always be like, I want a bit of space from, but just being with Jess and also like Zoe, who's coming to move in with us, I can just be with them all the time, and I love it. We're not dating. Next book on my top 10 books of 2020 is Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nicholls. Like I mentioned, I read this pretty much in one sitting on the way to LA back in February. I bought this in the queer section in Waterstones. It's a young adult book about the suffragettes, and it follows 4 or 5 young women from incredibly different backgrounds, be it political upbringing of their families and also their class as well, and about their involvement in the suffragette movement and their discovering their sexuality as well. Not all of them are queer, some of them are, some of them aren't. With it being a young adult book, it's very easy to fly through. The language isn't complex, but it is also written well. I have a major problem with books not being written well. Actor. What? Someone say something? But this was gorgeous. It starts pre-World War I and goes through the war and post-World War I as well. The character arcs of all of them are fantastic. My friend Carrie asked, what's your biggest takeaway from the year? I thought she meant what was my favourite takeaway food at first. The answer would be Wagamamas. Always, always, always Wagamamas. But no, for real, I think for me this year, the reason why I keep on keeping myself busy is because I don't trust myself by myself. And because of that, I need to get a therapist. I haven't had therapy since I was at drama school, and even then it was sporadic throughout the year because it was provided by the drama school, which was incredible. But a lot of students, 1 counsellor, not very much time. The only time before that when I've had proper therapy once a week was when I was 13. Sounds very young to be needing therapy, but fuck me, did I need that therapy. Deep moment there. Oh my god, Carrie has asked so many questions. She also asked favourite new author. We've already said Philip Pullman. Favourite indie bookshop, Gaze the Word. Of course it is. Am I a predictable motherfucker? Yes, I am. Perfect segue, because my next book is Hearstopper, which I bought from Gaze the Word. My friend Anne from Wibbly Wobbly Book Nerd recommended them to me. They were on my radar for a very long time, and then while she was studying at uni in Manchester, she came to stay with me in London for a few days. She was like, girl, you need these. I was like, you know what? Now seems like a good time. I bought volume 1, she bought volume 3. We read them together in one go, and the very next day I went and bought volume 2. Phenomenal. The queer relationships are fantastic. The representation, be that sexuality, gender and race, are amazing. The school experience, the way that it's written, is exactly what I experienced at school. Like, if you're not from the UK and you want to see what English high school, secondary school is like, read Heartstopper, because it is a spot on. And the falling in love for the first time was exactly my experience too, because when I first fell in love, it was with a girl. Charlie, before the book starts, knows that he's gay. Nick doesn't know about, he's never questioned his sexuality before. He's always just assumed that he's straight. So I very much related to Nick's kind of tumultuous feelings. Not only falling in love, but falling in love with someone of the same sex as you. That's just like so many things for a child to process. I've now read all of her Heartstopper / Nick and Charlie products, the 3 graphic novels and the 2 novellas, but I haven't read her other novels. So I need to read Solitaire, which is where Nick and Charlie are originally from, and also I have Loveless, which will be the next one of hers that I read. I'm loving filming in this. Should I always film in this chair? I think I should. Another question from Carrie Berry Blogs. What book has surprised you the most this year? Already answered that with those answers. I can talk about some books that I DNF'd. I DNF'd Queenie. I spent so long, I was like, I'm gonna finish it, I'm gonna finish it, I'm gonna finish it, but it's just not my jam. It was so highly acclaimed. And then of course it's about black joy, written by a black author. And I was like, I need this, I need to read it. I just don't like those sorts of chick lit books that are all about sex. It was described as a black Bridget Jones, and if I'd seen that description of it before I picked up the book, I wouldn't have picked up the book. I appreciate that Queenie is such an important book, and I'm so glad that it exists. I'm just not the target audience. Not because I'm not black. We obviously all need to read books about people whose lives are different to our own, to open up our eyes, to help us understand human beings better. But that sort of story is just not for me. Carrie said, why? He's so cute. What has been my favourite meal that I've cooked this year from Eloise Reid's? Probably Christmas dinner. I cooked it for me and my dad. I'm vegan, I've been vegan for years now, and this is the second Christmas lunch that I cooked entirely myself. I have actually discovered, because now that I have a job, my lunch breaks have to be used productively. I have discovered that I really like doing a pie, whack it in the oven for 40 minutes with mash and some roast veg. That fucking banging. Next book, oh yummy. The next book is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This book was everything I needed. I read it at the beginning of lockdown in the UK, and it was exactly what I needed. I'm the sort of person that I've really liked watching and reading things about similar situations. I say similar, like they're all worse. Movies and books that deal with pandemics and viruses, they always have worse situations than us, and I found that very comforting. So in Wilder Girls, these girls are trapped on an island. At the beginning of the book, they've been there for 2 years, and it's queer as well, which was just like, mwah. They don't make a big deal out of some of the girls being queer. It's just like a little sprinkle in every now and then. It has a very ambiguous ending, which a lot of people didn't like, but that's the sort of thing that I love. So I wanted to let you know, in case you go into it expecting it all to be rounded and concluded. It is a standalone. There isn't going to be a sequel as of now, but it is an open ending. So go into that bearing that in mind. But that was one of the reasons why I loved it so much. I loved the ending. I felt like it was so fitting for the book. So many twists and turns. The characters are fantastic. They're all flawed. They're all absolutely fucked. I mean, of course they're fucked. They're on an island having to survive off of measly rations that are being delivered to them by like the army or whatever from the mainland. It's horrendous, and I loved it. Tiffany from Release Karma said, if you could rewrite the ending to one book, which would it be and why? That's interesting, because if it had just been, if I could rewrite a book, I would have gone Chesil Beach, because I loved the kind of idea of it, but I hated the writing. I felt like the jumping back and forth between timelines didn't add to it at all. It detracted from it. And I feel like if it was written chronologically, I would have been more invested in the characters and their situation. But I really like the ending, because it takes place when they're in their early 20s, I want to say. And then it kind of does a chapter talking through the rest of their lives, and I thought it was fantastic. One of the main characters is asexual, by the way. So oddly enough, in that situation, I'd rewrite everything before the ending of the book. Can I say Northern Lights? Because of what happens at the end of Northern Lights. It's sort of like important, and it really packs a punch. And honestly, if it didn't happen, then it probably wouldn't have been as incredible. Oh no, Subtle Knife. Oh, but then again, the things that happen at the end of those books are some of the most incredibly well written things that have ever happened in any books. But they're so soul destroying that I wish that they didn't happen, but also I love them. I wouldn't change it. I lie. This is what I looked like when I finished The Subtle Knife, by the way. And the final question from Instagram is favourite book cover of the year, again from my lovely Rick. A much less attacky question this time. Thank you. Any covers with this artist creating them have been incredible. They also did An Enchantment of Ravens, but this year they did Star Daughter and Forest of Souls, and also Bone Cries Dawn. Bone Cries Moon is book 1, Bone Cries Dawn is book 2. I also love the illustrator who did Wilder Girls, who has another Asian-faced book coming out next year too. I really like ones with really beautifully done faces. The next book I'm going to talk about is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and no one is surprised. This is the second time of me reading it actually, which isn't as many as people have thought. The first time I read it, I was 16, I read it for school, and I loved it. But like I said, I grew up with the story through the BBC adaptation, which I still watch multiple times a year. This year I discovered the BBC adaptation of Emma as well, which I might love even more. I'm just coming in here being all controversial today. Like I mentioned earlier, it just makes me feel safe. It makes me feel good about the world. Love prevails. The characters are just so incredibly written. The reason why it has continued to be as popular and as famous as it was when it first came out is because of how relatable the characters are. The language, if you're not used to reading books from the 19th century, can be a bit hard at first, but the characters are such fully fleshed, well-rounded people. I am taking applications for my Mr. Mr. Darcy now, thank you very much. Actually, I prefer Mr. Knightley over Mr. Darcy. Because Mr. Knightley is basically Mr. Darcy when he's nice at the end of Pride and Prejudice, but throughout the whole of Emma. I'm looking for the Mr. Knightley to my Lizzie Bennet, which doesn't work, but fuck you. Caitlin on Twitter has asked me which book made me cry the most. Let me just remind you. Oh, no, tie between that and Edward Tulane. Didn't take a selfie after that one, but I pretty much looked like this. If not even worse, because in this one, I've taken off my makeup and I'm in the bath. But with Edward Tulane, I had a full face of makeup and it was a mess. The next book is Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. This book was so perfect. I haven't read book 2 yet. I read the first maybe 60 pages of book 2 and wasn't vibing with it as much, but apparently it gets better after like the first 100 pages, so I will be picking that up again soon. But this book was the warm hug that I needed. It follows Tilly, who discovers that she is a book wanderer. She can walk in and out of books and she can bring people from books into reality as well. But they have to be books you have a real connection with. So for her it is Alice in Wonderland and Anne of Green Gables. My favourite sequences are probably when she goes into the books. The Mad Hatter's tea party is, oh, it's just so good. It felt like fan fiction, the whole thing. It felt like just my childhood daydreams. I was Tilly. It was amazing. But also the plot twists. The goddamn fucking plot twists. I wasn't expecting this from a middle grade. It made me feel things, so many things. It made me full of love and joy, but also stress, so much stress. Some things that happen, I'm like, you're a dumb bitch. What? Literally, beginning of book 2, Tilly does something and I'm like, you nearly died multiple times in the first book, why are you still behaving like this? It's fantastic and you should read it. Alyssa asks, where is the best place to get used books in my opinion? I love eBay for used books. I've got 1 book off of Depop this year and I ordered 3. And I actually had to do the like process thingy where you claim your money back because the person at the other end didn't give you your things. So I wouldn't recommend Depop. eBay's amazing because there are like big companies that sell through eBay too. You can almost always find whatever you want in any edition that you want. There are some books that I have that I either already owned other books in the series in an edition that is no longer in print, or like I just ordered a biography of Lord Byron and I don't like the cover of the version that is now available. I like the previous cover, so I bought it online for like £4. There are some amazing bookshops, especially Oxfam in the UK. They have specific Oxfam charity bookshops as opposed to general charity shops with like a section of books. There are ones that are just books, which are excellent. My next book is absolutely not surprising to anybody ever, and that is Northern Lights. Lyra is the child that I was. The way that she tells stories that are technically lies is something that I sometimes still find myself doing. It's like I'm telling something that happened, but then I exaggerate it because it just makes it better for the person that's receiving the story. I'm making it more exciting for them, and I'm like, hang on, wait, Tasmyn, you're technically lying about this. Now, as an adult, I catch myself and I don't do it as much. But as a child, I just run with it, and that's exactly what Lyra was. I want to name my future child Lyra. Philip Pullman has the most beautiful prose. Like I mentioned, he's a pantser as opposed to a plotter, and so everything that all of the characters do feels so genuine because he's not thinking, oh, how do I get this onto the next plot point? He's going, how would Lyra or Will or Lee Scoresby or Lord Asriel, how would they react in this situation? And from there, he then makes up the rest of it. And yet it all somehow seems to all link back together. I don't understand how his brain works. If I had to say like top 5 books of all time, it would be up there. Spoops from Spoopy Hole, my angel, asked me, which books am I most excited for in 2021? Someone asked me this in a live show the other day and everyone else was like, oh, new release, new release. I don't keep up with new releases because I don't read books quickly enough from when I get them in order for me to be concerned about them. The answer that I gave in the live show is the new Litjoy Classics edition of Jane Eyre that's coming out. I bought myself the Pride and Prejudice earlier this year. It's absolutely beautiful. The artwork inside is just stunning, and they're bringing out Jane Eyre in 2021, and you bet your ass I'm gonna be buying it. Gaia, who is another one of my patrons, has asked me, which book do I wish I could read again for the first time? I'm not a big rereader. I reread The Magician's Nephew this year. I reread Eleanor Oliphant, but that was more because I wanted something that I was familiar with to just kind of listen to and that I knew I would enjoy. And I started rereading Jane Eyre, but this is the most rereads that I've ever done. When I choose to reread a book, it's because I loved it so much that I want to get more from it. So I don't necessarily think there are any books that I would want to read again for the first time, because usually when you reread, you notice things that you missed before. I might quite like to reread the penultimate chapter of The Southern Life again, purely because the emotional impact it had on me, now that I know what happens, won't shock me as much. And while it was incredibly painful to read, it was so emotionally impactful that I think I would love to experience that flooding of emotions again from a book. I've cried a lot of books in the past, but that one, fuck. I've got 2 more questions, so I'm just gonna do them and then talk about my final book on my list. Someone called Ma has asked me a question which I need to wrap my head around. Pick 2 books with my initials in the title, which are M and V, and tell us if, according to me, there is a connection between them. The connection can just be one word. M and V. M and V. I really like this chair. It's pink as well. You can't see, but it's a pink chair. Okay, V. These Violent Delights is one that comes into my head, and that is a book written by an Asian American undergrad, Rude, and it's set in Shanghai, and it's a fantasy, and it's a young adult book, and I'm very excited to read that next year. I've got the Fairy Lou edition, and it's stunning. And now M. Oh, okay. Master of One. It is a young adult fae queer fantasy, and the thing that links them is that I have both of the Fairy Loot editions, and they're both young adult fantasy, and they're both diverse. We love to see it. I've been talking for so long that I've got through 2 whole batteries. 2 whole batteries. And the final question is from my darling Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction. Always a mouthful. I've known her for years and I still always stumble on her channel name. Ashley asked me to go and grab the 37th book I see and tell me the story behind it, i.e. where I got it, why, did anyone recommend it, does it remind me of anyone? Let's go count some books. I'm just gonna go for that shelf. And the book is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I got gifted this by Tandem Collective for a read-along that they were doing earlier this year. This is a literary fiction book that I haven't finished. I was in a really, really bad mental health place, but it is amazing from the little bit that I read, and I do want to keep on reading it. Britt Bennett is a Black author, and this book is about 2 twins who are mixed race. They're part Black, part white, and they're from a really, really backwards town in America where they're all mixed of some kind, but they see the lighter skinned you are, the better you are. And they are very, very light, so much so that they can pass as white, and it follows these twins from when they run away from this town at the age of 16 and then they go their separate ways in adulthood. One of them marries a Black man and has a dark skinned baby, and then the other one passes for white, marries a white man, has a family that all look white, and I'm pretty sure her husband doesn't know that she's part Black. I'm pretty sure it looks at the twins when they come back together in adult life, and also their children, the one that passes as white and doesn't even know that they're part Black, and the one that's really, really dark skinned. The writing is stunning. I have a feeling this will become another favorite when I eventually read it. It's so beautifully written and it's so fascinating to read because, like I've said, I'm mixed race, and I've heard my whole life, not from white people, that being mixed race is good, because, like, you know, in America it's a really bad thing to say that it's like that mixed race babies are really cute or something. I don't know why, because I've been told my whole life from Asian families that I'm pretty because I'm mixed race. So it's really interesting to read about the perception that we have of people that are mixed race from a Black author, and also from the perspective of this town of Black people who don't like Black skin. It's very complex, and while obviously I can't relate to it on the Black front, I do relate to some things that are said in terms of being biracial, multiracial. And the final book that I have to talk about is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I definitely didn't keep on tapping on my legs then because I forgot the title. Already mentioned, beautiful, beautiful writing. Oh my god, it's stunning. Catherine Arden isn't Russian herself, but she, I believe, has done a lot of research to do with Russia and Russian folklore. I believe she might have lived there for a bit. We follow Basia from when her parents are pregnant, then I believe the trilogy follows her through to her late teens. It's all about Russian folklore, the magical creatures, the gods, and the household kind of little magical elfy people. They remind me of, have any of you watched or read the Spiderwick Chronicles? Because there's the brownie in that. The brownie reminded me of the magical creatures that kind of live around the house. There's like a creature that lives in the lake. There's one that is in the stables and looks after the horses. And it's like, again, bringing it back to me being Asian, the beautiful ritual of leaving offerings to the gods. Whenever we'd go to a Buddhist temple back in China, we'd like light incense, we'd leave some food and that sort of stuff. And I don't necessarily believe it, but it's just a lovely thing that I've always done, and it feels warm and like home, and it's just a nice thing to do. Even if it doesn't do anything, it's a nice thought of you consciously going, I'm going to put something good into the world. So that is something that I really love, that reminded me of the motherland. And the kind of crux of book 1 is that a Catholic priest has come to their little village and is trying to get them to stop praying to the old gods and to pray to the new Catholic god, and everything kind of turns upside down from there. But it's not just about that story. All of the characters are incredible. The stepmom is fantastic. By fantastic I mean terrifying and fucked up. Even the characters that from Vasia's perspective are evil, or the not good ones, you can understand why they are the way they are. The whole thing is written so fucking phenomenally. It's one of the best books I've ever read, like I mentioned, and one of the best written books I've ever read as well. The entire thing, while I've never had any experience with Russian folklore before and I've never read this series before, it felt familiar. The way that it's written is written like a fairy tale. If you've read anything by Aesop, if you've read anything by the Grimm brothers, any kind of European, West Asian folklore, it feels like that. And that is everything. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it to the end of this video, put a fairy emoji. Let me know what some of your favorite books of the year are. If you have any other questions for me, leave them down below and I might put them in a future Q&A. I hope you're all safe and well. I hope you're all not being reckless. Remember that we need to be selfless and look after one another. And we've got through this year and we're gonna get through next year as well. And we have survived. If you haven't done anything productive this year and all you have done is survived, don't beat yourself up about it, because fuck me, surviving this year has been tough. Give yourself a massive fucking pat on the back for getting through it. Thank you all for watching. I will leave all of my things down below. I'm also trying to be more active in my Patreon this year. I've got some more ideas of things that I'm gonna do throughout the year for Patreon, so the link for that is down below as well. See you soon. Stay sexy. Bye. I need to stop doing that. It's not 2015, but I enjoy it.